BBC, Al Jazeera, Press TV, Geo TV, and LBC London Radio. He's the author of the book War on Terror and Siege of Pakistan, published in 2009. He is also highly qualified academically in many aspects of the law. Please welcome Shahid Qureshi.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Chairman, and Alan Hart, and Dr. Ruth. He's Chair. My today's topic is about what are the domestic policies and domestic circumstances which lead to the foreign policy and the elements which Dr. Ruth has touched upon. I'll quote something from last year. I was interviewed by the BBC just before two days before the elections in Pakistan. Then George Alagai asked me, what is the crucial problem in Pakistan at the moment? And I said, Pakistan's number one problem is treachery. And he was surprised, because nobody ever said that the treachery is the number one issue of Pakistan. And when we looked at the national and international agreement, mostly, they do not make sense. Because if we look at historically, the Pakistan signed the CETO agreement and CENTO agreement and other agreements. If you read them, they're all one-sided. Either the people who are signing them or writing them, they don't know about the interests of Pakistan and they don't know how to protect them. Because when you're signing an agreement, that agreement should be based on that you are looking after the national interest of the country. And that is for something for the Foreign Office in Pakistan to look at when they sign any kind of agreement in future. Otherwise, it just become a waste of paper. It was ignored. Someone asked me a few days ago that why Pakistani leaders, when they're in power, seek help from foreign countries. And my response was, because those foreign countries, Britain included, have made a lot of friends in Pakistan. And those friends are the people who are running Pakistan and India as well. In Pakistan, there are approximately about 5,000 people who are, that's including the political, military, and civil, and it's about 5,000 of them who are running the 200 million of Pakistani, and maybe more in India. So these elite is not part of the solution. This elite is part of the problem in Pakistan, because this is the elite who has deposited about $200 billion in Swiss accounts, looted from Pakistan, taken away systematically in various ways. I don't want to go into details, but it's on the record. And I think it's time for the United Nations to look at the secrecy of these bank accounts, because it's immoral, unethical to have a looted money from 4 countries deposited in Swiss account where you have no accountability, no transparency. And this is for the lawyers to look at. Similarly, when British went to India, the Indian GDP was about 24% at the time, and that was before arrival of the East India Company. And when Britain left, the total amount that Britain took from India in 200 years was far less than the Indian politicians have taken in the last 67 years. So they have taken more money in 67 years than the British took in 200 years. A few months back, I was watching a documentary by Ross Kemp. He do documentary about gangs. He goes around all over the world. And he went to El Salvador. And El Salvador is a small country, size of London, and similar kind of population. And there is approximately about a dozen or so murders every day. And there are gangs, MS-16 and MS-15, there are different kinds of gangs who are killing each other every day. And then Ross Kemp went to a journalist, asking him what is going on in this country. Lino Gomez was a journalist who he spoke to, and he said, well, in actual fact, these people who you see on the street who are playing football with the heads of the other opponents of the gangs are not the real gangsters. The real gangsters are the people who are wearing Rolex watches, who are living in expensive villas, and they have nothing to do with this gang violence every day, the police corruption. The reality is that El Salvador is passing through about 476 tons of cocaine to United States, according to the FDA, which is worth about $30 billion, and that's a lot of money. So the point I'm making is to create distractions in those countries, including Pakistan and India and other parts. The real gangsters create these distractions. I'll come to this later on. FATA in Pakistan, which is where the fight is going on, North Waziristan and South Waziristan, that agency is only 1.5% of Pakistan. And the people who are responsible for terrorist activities, the criminality, the drugs trade are there basically. But the beneficiary of those criminal acts, drug trade, are not living in front. They're living in defense. They're living in, apologies if you live in defense, in Cliftons, in different posh areas with multi-million rupees villas, expensive cars. These are the people who are responsible for these distractions. Now, everyone in Pakistan talks about South Waziristan, North Waziristan agreements with. The question one should be asking is that what is really happening in 98.5% Pakistan? What is the law and order situation? What is the police doing over there? How is the civilian governments living there? In between 2008 and 2013 March, 64,400 people were murdered in Pakistan, and that's according to the national crime data. So where was the police? Where was the Zardari government? Where was the democratic government? 83,000 people were kidnapped. 14,000 women were raped. And that is according on the watchful eyes of President Zardari and the democratic government. This has got nothing to do with Taliban or terrorist activities of Taliban or what is happening in Afghanistan or what is happening on the other side of the border in India. That is to do with how the country is literally governed by the politicians. Coming to the treachery point of view, initially, the fact of the matter is, when Pakistani politicians talk to Indian politicians, for example, either they want to please each other or they don't mean what they say. It is a fact that the Indian leadership at the time in 1947 decided to invade Kashmir, send the troops there, and killed more than 100,000 people up till now. This is a fact. Nobody can deny it. They demolished their homes, raped women, children. This is a fact. Now, how difficult it is for the politicians to call spade a spade, that this is what has happened, and if the leadership of the present BJP leadership or Mr. Nawaz Sharif, he thinks that he could have a friendly relationship with India, fine, no problem. But the fact of the matter is that if the Indian leadership at the time in 1947 was genuine in peace and genuine in making good relationship with Pakistan, they wouldn't have invaded Kashmir at the time. So a friend of mine is a journalist, he told me yesterday, I said, well, you sent the troops to, Jinnah sent the troops to Kashmir, but the Raja was a Hindu. And I said, well, what about Junagadh? Raja was a Muslim, but you still annexed, still send the troops there, and then come to Kargil. Well, Kargil was a response to Siachen. Now, we are even. You tested nuclear, so okay, in response we tested nuclear. So how far are we going? And these tit for tat going on for 67 years prove one thing, that the people in that region are so intelligent and so competent that they can start from the scratch and then they can become a nuclear state, apart from all these things happening, what was happening to Pakistan. Now, Indian political leadership if they were so genuine about the making good friendly relationships with Pakistan, they wouldn't have created Bangladesh. They wouldn't have conspired to create Bangladesh. Now, because of their incompetence and their behavior, India was divided twice within 60 years. And that is a fact. Now, when I talk about what is really happening in India, India has its own internal problems. The more than 100 districts are under the control of Naxalites and other parties involved. Assam, for example, in a Sikhs issue, the issue with Babri Mosque. These are the people, these are the mosques which existed long before 1947, long before British came. The Golden Temple existed long before British came, so is the Babri Mosque. So what was the point of demolishing Babri Mosque, invading Golden Temple and bombing it with the military, which is supposed to be protecting those holy sites? This shows that there is no space for the minorities. And the country is being run by a small minority of people who has no interest in peace, who has no interest in humanity or human life. And I said to my friend in Delhi last week, I said, what the democracy do it for you, that if you're sitting in a parliament, thinking about the person sitting next to you as lower than you, you don't think he's an equal to you because he belongs to a different caste, and you are from a higher caste, so therefore his votes does not mean anything. You're not ready to drink water with him in the same cup, in the same glass. So what is the democracy teaches you? Nothing. You still think you're superior than the other Indians sitting next to you who came with the same votes. Now this is a racist mentality, and this is the racist mentality which they are borrowing from some certain countries in Middle East, for example. This barbed wires, the bars, the walls, the siege mentality, this is coming from somewhere else. And obviously there are beneficiaries of these businesses as a result of this war profiteering and preparation for war. We talk about the distractions. So who was responsible for Malegaon bombings? Who was responsible for parliament attacks in India? Who was responsible for the Mumbai attacks? So these were the internal elements who were creating these distractions, scaring their own people, like the people in the United States, for example. They have this orange, yellow levels, and this is to frighten people, this is to scare people. In India, they have these 3 bombings and they blamed Muslims for it. It was, again, credit goes to the Indians, police and the security services. They were able to unfold these real criminals who actually did this. And the people who did this were Hindu fundamentalists who has no interest in peace. How it feels like that you're burning a train with people inside, you lock the door. What kind of mental state will you be in? This is more than a war crime. This is criminal. And people who are defending that, they're bigger criminals than that. I will just mention the growth of mafias both in Indian side and in Pakistan side. India is the country who have highest number of Swiss accounts. And if Mr. Modi is really interested to get his money back from the Swiss banks, he will not need any aid from any country, the trillions of dollars which are deposited there. But I don't know that if he would be able to do it, because the people who has invested in his campaign may not or might not allow him to go down that route. Now he is hostage to the bankers and corporations who has invested in his whole campaign. If he was be able to do, but it's a good intention, he could do it. The mafias are, for example, the police system is almost the same between the 2 countries. And the present election, I was reading somewhere, about 37% of the people who have participated in the who won the elections in India are the people who are called bhailogs, dons. They won the elections. So they are part of the political process in Pakistan and India as well. These mafia dons have their own interests. They have no interest with the how people are living on the street. What are their interests? For example, if the policeman is killed in Pakistan, not necessarily that policeman is killed due to the competence of the killers. It could be the incompetence of his own colleagues who have been involved in corruption and might not pass on the right information. Now this police corruption in Pakistan has become a security issue. The military deaths are as a result of the corruption and incompetence of the police. Now what is the expectation from the politicians is the military should go and look after the cities. This was about 3 days ago. They were asking Pakistan's army to come and take over the security of the big cities. So what is the police doing about it? Sending military to these kinds of operations is counterproductive and will not serve any purpose, and that will fuel the mafias to get their gains. Okay. I'll just finish it off. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, when he was talking about the partition of Bangladesh in 1971, he should know now that the Indians have accepted that they conspired to create Bangladesh and they did everything to make this happen. The military at the time was able to provide the civilian control in March, months before. It was civilian administration who couldn't take over the control. And lastly, I would just touch upon the treachery part with the Geo incident, what the Geo did. They had 8 hours campaign against the ISI chief, and there was nobody in Pakistan who could switch off this channel. A few months ago, there was a security committee meeting in the parliament in the UK. It was a live broadcast, but they had 5 minutes delay just in case somebody says something which could be a national security issue. But in Pakistan, 8 hours, and this channel who's been funding from whatever countries is involved in this, in demonizing its own institutions. And nobody said anything about it. Now, the purpose is to bring all these issues to your attention is that the domestic issues and problems which dictates a country to devise its foreign policy and policy towards its neighbors. So if these issues are resolved, we might have a different foreign policy towards India and vis-a-vis India as well, if they have different issues. And finally, I would like to say that no one can ride on your back unless it is bent. Thank you very much.